1. The lost and found in the beating heart of the city, where the murmur of thousands of lives converges and disperses. In the grand concourse of the central train station, there exists a small office that time seems to have forgotten. It is cleverly hidden behind a monumental marble staircase, next to a vending machine that has been out of service for years, its glass front opaque with a thick layer of dust that tells its own story of neglect. The sign on the door, painstakingly hand-painted in a bygone era, shows the faded and peeling letters of lost and found. Most people, swept away by the current of haste, pass by without a second glance, their minds already at their destinations, their trains, their lives intertwined with punctuality. But for those who have lost something precious, this small office is a sanctuary, a place of desperate hope, a beacon in a storm of panic and regret. Inside, the air is a symphony of smells, of dust and old paper, of the damp wool of forgotten coats on rainy days, and the faint metallic scent of abandoned things. The dark, almost black, wooden shelves rise to the ceiling, crammed with cardboard boxes labeled with neat calligraphy noting dates and places. Each box is a small coffin of memories, a treasure trove of the remnants of 1,000 journeys. A single child's glove, knitted with bright blue wool, now a little frayed. A worn-out teddy bear, with a button eye hanging by a thread, a silent witness to childhood hugs. A book of poetry, with a cracked spine, and passages underlined with a delicate hand, whispers of a heart in love. A pair of glasses with a missing lens, frozen in a state of perpetually broken vision. Each object tells a story, a fragment of an interrupted life. Behind the scratched oak counter, polished by the rubbing of countless elbows and hands, sits an old man named Samuel. He has worked here for 40 years. A quiet and discreet man, with kind eyes that have seen more sadness and relief than most. His hair is a cloud of fine silver, and his hands, though stained with ink and wrinkled by time, move with a deliberate and careful grace. He is the guardian of lost things, the curator of a museum of forgotten moments. He has seen it all. The frantic businessman who lost his briefcase full of crucial documents for a life-changing meeting, the tearful little girl who lost her favorite doll, her only confidant, the young couple who lost their camera with all their vacation photos, the only tangible memories of an unrepeatable trip. He treats each lost object with a silent reverence, as if he understands that it is more than just a thing. It is a piece of someone's life, a story that has been temporarily misplaced. Samuel believes that objects absorb the emotions of their owners, and that his job is not just to catalog, but also to comfort these silent echoes. Just that morning, a young woman had come in, her face streaked with tears, looking for a silk scarf that her grandmother had given her before she died. Samuel asked no questions. He simply listened, nodded empathetically, and then, with a small, reassuring smile, he pulled out a box dated from the previous week. Inside, carefully folded, was the scarf. The gratitude in the young woman's eyes was the only reward Samuel needed. And in a small wooden box on the counter, an object that Samuel often touched, among a tangle of other keys for cars, lockers, and suitcases, lies a single ornate brass key. It is an old key, heavy in the hand, with a decorative, almost flower-shaped head, and a long, slender shaft. It is the kind of key that belongs to an old house, to a heavy wooden door with a lock that turns with a satisfying mechanical click. The key has been here for 6 months. It was found on a bench on platform 4, left behind by someone in a hurry, someone who didn't realize what they had lost until it was too late. Samuel has picked it up many times, turning it over in his hands, wondering about the door it belongs to, the home from which it has been separated. It is a key without a lock, a story without an end, waiting patiently for its protagonist to return. 2. The weight of the past. The key is not just a piece of metal. It is a vessel of memories, a silent witness to a life lived. If you were to hold it, you would feel the weight of its history. The brass is worn and smooth in some places, polished by the rubbing of a hand that held it every day. There are small nicks and scratches on its surface, each a small forgotten moment, a stumble in the dark, a hasty search in a full purse, a moment of panic when it was thought to be lost. The key has a faint, almost imperceptible scent, a mixture of metal and something else, something human. It smells of home, of security, of the countless times it has been used to lock and unlock a door, to secure a space, to create a sanctuary. This key belonged to a man named Leo. He was a refugee, a man who had been forced to flee his home in a country torn apart by war. He had arrived in this city 10 years ago with nothing more than a small suitcase and a heart full of memories of a life that no longer existed. He was a quiet man, with sad eyes and a gentle smile that rarely reached them. In his home country, he had been a literature professor at the university, a man whose passion was to unravel the beauty and complexity of stories. He loved books and words, and he firmly believed in the power of narrative to shape identity and preserve memory. His classes were famous, not for their academic rigor, but for the passion with which he spoke of forgotten poets and revolutionary novelists. Now, he worked as a janitor in an office building, a job that was invisible, anonymous, a world away from the life he once knew, the smell of disinfectant and the hum of fluorescent lights were the soundtrack to his new existence. Leo carried the key with him, wherever he went, kept in the small pocket of his trousers, where he could feel its cold outline against his skin. It was the key to his small one-room apartment in a rundown building on the outskirts of the city. But it was more than that. It was a symbol, a tangible link to the idea of home, an idea that had become both precious and painful to him. It was a reminder of the home he had lost, the heavy oak door with the lion-shaped iron knocker, the smell of his mother's cooking wafting from the kitchen, the sound of his father's booming laughter echoing down the hall. And it was a symbol of the home he was trying to build here, in this new, unfamiliar city, a home that felt fragile, temporary, as if it could be snatched away from him at any moment, like a page torn from a book. 3. The first door lets go back in time. Back to a small, sun-drenched town with cobblestone streets and houses with red-tiled roofs. This is where the key was born, where it first found its purpose. It was the key to Leo's childhood home, a house that had been in his family for generations. It was a house full of books and music, with a back garden where roses climbed the stone walls, and the air smelled of damp earth and sweet flowers. The front door was a massive thing, made of dark, heavy oak, and the key was its perfect match, a sturdy and reliable piece of brass that felt solid and permanent in the hand. Leo remembered the first time his father had allowed him to use the key. He was 7 years old, and he had been begging for weeks to be allowed to open the door by himself. His father, a tall, kind man with a booming laugh and hands calloused from working in the garden, had finally relented. He had placed the key in Leo's small hand, its weight a surprise, a responsibility. "A house is not just a building, son," his father had told him, crouching down to his height. "It is the guardian of our stories, and this key welcomes you to them." Leo had stood on tiptoe, his tongue sticking out in concentration, and had carefully inserted the key into the lock. He had turned it, feeling the satisfying click of the mechanisms, and had pushed the heavy door open. The feeling of triumph, of being trusted, of being the master of his own home, was a memory that had stayed with him all his life, an anchor in the turbulent seas of his memory. That key had opened the door to 1,000 moments of happiness. It had opened the door to birthday parties and holiday feasts, to quiet afternoons reading by the fire while the rain beat against the windows, to the comforting presence of his family. It was the key to his world, to his identity, to everything he knew and loved. And then, one day, it became the key to a memory. The war came, silent at first, like a rumor on the wind, and then with a fury that consumed everything. In the chaos and panic of their departure, as the sound of sirens filled the air, Leo had grabbed the key from the hook next to the door, a small, instinctive act of preservation. It was the only thing he took from his former life, the only tangible piece of the home he would never see again. 4. The second door for years. The key was a ghost in Leo's pocket, a constant, heavy reminder of all he had lost. He lived in overcrowded refugee camps, in temporary shelters with strangers, in a series of rented rooms in foreign cities where he didn't understand the language. He was a homeless man, a man adrift in a world that seemed to have no place for him. In one particular refugee camp, a place of mud and canvas, the key became his only treasure. While others traded their last possessions for food or medicine, Leo clung to the key. One night, an old man, seeing Leo holding the key under the light of a candle, told him, "As long as you have the key to a home, even if it's only in your memory, you are not completely lost." Those words stayed with him. The key was a source of both comfort and pain. Sometimes he would take it out and hold it in his hand, its familiar weight a connection to his past, a reminder of who he had been. Other times, he would avoid touching it, its presence a sharp, stabbing pain in his heart, a reminder of the injustice of the world. And then, 10 years ago, he arrived in this city. He found a job, a small apartment, a semblance of life. The apartment was nothing like his childhood home. It was a single room on the 3rd floor of a noisy, crowded building, with a window that looked out onto a brick wall. The door was thin and flimsy, the lock cheap and unreliable. But it was his. It was a place where he could close the door to the world, a place where he could be alone with his memories. On the day he moved in, his heart full of a mixture of hope and resignation, he inserted the old brass key into the lock of his new apartment, out of sheer habit, expecting nothing. And then the small miracle happened. It fit. The lock turned. The door opened. It was a coincidence, a small, improbable miracle in a life that had been devoid of them. Or perhaps, Leo thought, it was a sign that he could build a new home here, that he could find a way to connect his past with his present, that stories, like keys, can sometimes find new locks. So the key found a new purpose. It became the key to his new life, the key to his small, quiet sanctuary. He used it every day, the familiar weight in his hand, a bridge between two worlds. It was a constant reminder of where he came from, and a symbol of his determination to survive, to endure, to create a new home for himself in this strange new land. 5. The loss. 6 months ago, Leo had a bad day. It was the anniversary of his family's departure from their home, a day that always brought a fresh wave of grief and loss. He went to work, his heart heavy, his mind 1,000 miles away, in a garden full of roses and laughter. He cleaned the floors and emptied the trash cans, his movements slow and mechanical, each action a hollow echo of the vibrant life he had left behind. After work, he didn't go straight home. He felt an irresistible pull to the train station, a place he often went when he felt lost. He would sit on a bench and watch the trains come and go, watch people hugging and saying goodbye, and he would feel a strange sense of connection to the world, a sense of being part of the great, flowing river of humanity, a spectator of stories in motion. He sat on a bench on platform 4, the old brass key, a heavy weight in his pocket. He took it out and held it in his hand, its smooth, worn surface a comfort against his palm. He thought of his father, of his mother, of the life they had lost. He remembered the smell of old books in his father's study, the taste of his mother's soup on a cold day. He thought of the 2 doors the key had opened, the 2 homes it had belonged to. He sat there for a long time, lost in his memories, as the sun set and the station began to empty. And then, with a sigh that seemed to carry away a part of his soul, he stood up and walked away, leaving the key behind on the bench, a small, forgotten piece of his heart. He didn't realize it was gone until he reached his apartment building and reached into his pocket. The panic was immediate, a cold, nauseating wave that rose in his throat. He searched all his pockets, his bag, his wallet, with a growing desperation. It was gone. He ran back to the station, his heart pounding against his ribs. But the bench was empty. The light of a single lonely lamp-post illuminated the spot where he had been sitting, now painfully empty. He went to the lost and found office, but it was closed for the night, the door dark and silent. He returned the next day, and the day after, but the key was not there. It was gone, and with it, a part of him was gone too. The bridge between his past and his present had collapsed. 6. The key's journey, and the key remained on the bench for an hour before being found by a cleaner, a young woman with tired eyes and a kind heart. She picked it up, feeling its unusual weight, and took it to the lost and found office, where it was placed in the wooden box on the counter. And there it stayed, among the other lost and forgotten things, waiting. It was a key that had lost its purpose, a key that no longer knew which door was home. It had belonged to 2 homes, 2 lives, 2 worlds, and now it belonged to none. It was an orphan, a refugee, a small, silent symbol of loss and displacement. Samuel, the old man who ran the office, felt a strange connection to the key from the moment he saw it. Sometimes he would pick it up and hold it in his hand, its weight and its history something tangible. He imagined the person who had lost it, the life they had lived, the door they could no longer open. He felt a sense of responsibility for it, a desire to see it returned to its rightful owner. One day, an antiques collector, looking for a lost umbrella, saw the key and offered to buy it. "It's a beautiful piece," he said, but Samuel shook his head. "It's not for sale," he replied softly. "It's waiting for someone." But no one came to claim it. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months, and the key remained in the box, its story untold, its purpose unfulfilled. It became a silent presence in the office, a small mystery that Samuel contemplated in quiet moments. Sometimes, when the office was empty, and the only sound was the ticking of the old wall clock, Samuel would take out the key and place it on a velvet cloth. He would observe it under the light of his desk lamp, imagining the stories it could tell. He wondered if the door it opened still existed, or if, like so many things, it had fallen victim to time and war. The key became his small, silent obsession, a puzzle he longed to solve. 7. The return. Leo was devastated by the loss of the key. It was more than just a piece of metal. It was his last connection to his past, his only link to the home he had lost. He had the lock on his apartment door changed, but the new key felt light and flimsy in his hand, a cheap imitation of the real thing. Every time he used it, he felt a pang of loss. He felt adrift, unmoored, a man with no past and no future. He stopped going to the train station. The place that had once brought him a strange sense of comfort now only brought him pain and the echo of his carelessness. And then one day, 6 months after he had lost the key, he found himself walking past the station. He didn't know why. He just felt a pull, a need to be there, as if an invisible string were guiding him, He walked through the grand concourse, his heart heavy, and then he saw it. The small, forgotten office with the faded sign, "Lost and Found." He had been there so many times in the days after he had lost the key, with a dwindling hope. He hadn't been back since, having accepted his loss. But today, on impulse, he went in. Samuel looked up as he entered, his kind eyes taking in the sad, tired face of the man standing before him. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice gentle. Leo hesitated. It was a long shot, a foolish hope that hurt to admit. But he had to ask. I lost a key," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "A long time ago. 6 months. An old brass key with a flower-shaped head." Samuel's eyes lit up with a flash of recognition. Without a word, he reached for the wooden box on the counter and rummaged in it for a moment. And then he pulled it out. The key. Leo's heart stopped. Time seemed to freeze. He reached out, his hand trembling, and took it from Samuel. Its familiar weight in his hand was a shock, a jolt of recognition that ran through his entire body. It was like finding a piece of his own soul. "It's been waiting," Samuel said quietly. "Dai," with an understanding smile. "I knew you'd come back for it." 8. A new door Leo left the station. The key clutched tightly in his hand. He didn't go back to his apartment. He walked through the city, his feet carrying him without any conscious thought, as if the key itself were guiding him. He walked for hours, through neighborhoods he had never seen before, until he found himself standing in front of a small, run-down bookstore. The sign in the window said, "For sale." Dust covered the display windows, but through them he could see empty shelves waiting to be filled. And in that moment, something shifted in Leo. He looked at the key in his hand, this small, sturdy piece of metal that had survived so much, that had found its way back to him against all odds. And he realized that the key was not just a symbol of the homes he had lost. It was a symbol of his own survival, his own resilience, his own ability to create a new home for himself, wherever he was. He had been so focused on the doors the key had opened in the past that he had forgotten that it could also open doors to the future. He bought the bookstore. He used his life savings, all the money he had carefully saved for years. He cleaned it and painted it, transforming the dusty space into a warm and welcoming haven. He filled it with books, new and second-hand, creating a mosaic of stories, the things he loved. He hung a small, hand-painted sign above the door. The Open Book. The name seemed perfect. On the day he opened the shop, the sun was shining and the smell of paper and ink filled the air. He took the old brass key and hung it on a hook next to the door, not as a key to be used, but as a reminder, a symbol. A reminder that home is not just a place you come from. It is a place you create. It is a story you write for yourself. And sometimes, the most important doors are the ones you open for the first time with a key that has finally found its true purpose. Not to open a single door, but to open a world of possibilities. My name is May, and this is where what you don't see becomes what you feel.